Due to the global situation right now, the travel industry is facing many headwinds. Several investors are looking to get a stake in companies related to the travel industry, but due to the sheer amount of options and the divided opinions, they have a hard time making a decision. It therefore seems like the right time to have a look at the airline industry, and more specifically, the European airline industry. European airlines have a history of going bankrupt, especially in recent years. Keep in mind that they went bankrupt during a bull market, when things were economically great. Now that the economy is likely to take a sour turn, we need to be very careful before we invest in any airline. This is the Dutch investor bringing you the European airline sector analysis. Before I mention which companies we will be looking at, let's start with the bankruptcies of the past 3 years. First, Air Berlin, who went bankrupt in August 2017. Not long after that, British airline Monarch followed. A year later, Danish airline Primera Air also went bankrupt. And a few months after that, another German airline had to pack their bags. On February 16, 2019, another British airline went bankrupt. This time it was Fly BMI. On March 28, 2019, the Icelandic airline called WOW Air also filed for bankruptcy. And in September 2019, 3 airlines filed for bankruptcy. The most famous one was the British Thomas Cook. I think you all know that one. Followed by the French airline called Aigle Azur, if that's how you pronounce it, I'm not even sure. And after that, the Slovenian Adria Airways. 5 days later, another French airline went bankrupt. And finally, this year, or this month, I could even say, another one went bankrupt, and this time it was Flybe, the British airline. So, in the past 3 years, 4 airlines from the United Kingdom went bankrupt. Besides that, another 2 airlines went bankrupt in Germany and another 2 in France. Some may be unexpectedly so, due to their size. But please keep this in mind the next time you think, no way this airline will go bankrupt, the government won't let that happen. While this could be the case, it is certainly not a certainty. So let's have a look at the European airlines that we are going to be analyzing today. First and foremost, Ryanair, who had 152.4 million passengers in 2019. After that comes Lufthansa Group. This company has several airlines beneath him, like the Lufthansa Group has Lufthansa, Air Berlin, and I believe Belgium Airlines and stuff like that. And they had a passenger amount of 145.2 million in 2019 as well. Next up is International Consolidated Airlines Group. This one you're probably not familiar with. This is the holding company of Aer Lingus, British Airways, Vueling, Level, Iberia, and soon probably also Air Europa. Next up, Air France, KLM. If you are Dutch, you will know this one for sure. Next, EasyJet, also a famous one, bit to the likes of Ryanair, cheap flight company. Next, Wizz Air, it's a Hungarian airline company, also trying to compete with Ryanair and EasyJet. After that comes Norwegian Air Shuttle. After that, SAS. SAS is the airline company of Denmark and Sweden. And after that comes Aegean Airlines, which is a Greek company, I believe. And finally, Finnair, which is a Finnish company. And as a bonus, we will be looking at TUI. I know a lot of you guys out there are interested in TUI, so I will be giving TUI similar ratings, but I will not include it in the top 10 list. This company is too diverse to include it with the rest of the airline companies, but it'll give you an idea of how this company is looking in general. We will be comparing the airlines on several key aspects or metrics, being survivability in days. Here you can see how I calculated the survivability in days. I will also be including the Excel sheets in the comments or in the description of the video, so make sure to check that out if you're interested in how I calculate these things. Next up is the return on invested capital and return on equity. These numbers will tell us how wisely they spent their available cash and how their returns have been compared to their own value. After that, we're going to be looking at management, two different aspects. One, insider stakeholders, meaning what percentage of insiders holds this company. And why? Well, this basically tells us how important the success of a company is to the management on a personal level. And secondly, we will check if insiders have been buying in the past 3 months, and this is one that I find very important. And lastly, we will be looking at valuation. In this case, we're going to be looking at the acquirer's multiple, which is calculated by enterprise value divided by EBITDA. And if you're wondering how enterprise value is calculated, I will show you here, which is the market cap plus the total debt minus the cash and cash equivalents. So I've done all these calculations for you, and right now we're going to look at the results of those calculations. Let's start with survivability. And what I forgot to mention, and I now see it, is the rating from 1 to 10. What I'll be doing on each of these sheets is that I will mention, I will give them a number from 1 to 10, 10 being the highest. And if they have a very good, let's say, survivability in days, they will get a 10. If it's a bit lower than that, 9, then 8, 7, all the way down to 1, because we'll basically be evaluating 10 companies. So that's how it's going to be. Let's start with survivability. The calculation of their survivability in days is purely based on their own cash position and does not take into account any government aid that they might receive. As you can see in this table, the best scoring ones are the smaller airlines Wizz Air and Aegean Airlines. Norwegian Air Shuttle and Lufthansa score very poorly, so this is something to keep in mind if you are considering investing in these companies. They will probably need government aid to survive. Also TUI, the one at the bottom at the bonus, scores very poorly and could be in financial trouble. However, yesterday news came out that TUI is likely to receive a $1.8 billion government loan, which will cover about an extra 40 days of expenses for them. So next up is the return on invested capital and return on equity. Both Wizz Air and Aegean Airlines score great again. They score so great that it is questionable whether these numbers are correct. Like, these are the 10-year averages, so the fact that it is so high makes me wonder whether it is correct. Maybe they had share dilution or something like that that causes these numbers to inflate, which it seems like has happened. But nonetheless, they score very great, and this is just something to keep in mind if we are going to take these companies seriously to invest in. We just want to make sure that we check these numbers and calculate them ourselves. And yeah, you see here Air France KLM scores the worst, has a very bad return on invested capital, so keep that in mind. Next up is the return on equity. Again, Wizz Air and Aegean Airlines score very well. A close third is International Consolidated Airlines Group, which is kind of unexpected because it's one of the big ones, so you would expect it to be in the same line as Air France, KLM, Lufthansa Group, because those are comparable companies. But it scores very well, and Lufthansa Group and Ryanair score very well as well. KLM, on the other hand, scores very poorly and is the only one with a negative return on equity. On to management. Ryanair, 5% insider owner stake, it's pretty good. Lufthansa Group 0%, that is one to keep in mind because there is nobody inside the business that has a stake in the company. So besides job security, they really do not have any incentive to keep this company up and running. Although the government of Germany and the government of Belgium do have a big stake in keeping these companies afloat, but we want to see insider ownership. That is very important. One that really springs out is EasyJet, 33.3% of insider ownership. Basically, they are very dependent on the success of the company. So EasyJet, they want to see growth. They have to. Basically, all their net worth is in there. I was surprised that TUI also has a 3.6% ownership, insider ownership, which is a good sign. That means that the insiders will make sure that the company will grow. Next up, insider buying. There's only been 4 companies that have seen insider buying in the past 3 months. One that stood out to me was International Consolidated Airlines Group, because of their sheer size and comparable to Air France KLM, and due to the Dutch news, I am very much aware of the problems KLM is in. I would have expected International Consolidated Airlines Group to be in similar issues, but they are actually buying back, not buying back, but the insiders are buying shares. So that is a great sign. And the other 2 that were surprising to me is Norwegian Air Shuttle and SAS, because those didn't really stand out to me as being good investments. So, but we'll come to that in the next point. So, valuation. I already explained to you how I calculated these numbers. Here you can see the results. Wizz Air, Finnair, Aegean Airlines are the most attractive one based on valuations. That means that Wizz Air and Aegean Airlines have basically the best chance of surviving with no government aid. They are attractively priced, and they have a very good return on investment capital and return on equity. So if we had to make a decision based on that and we weren't looking at size or market share and so on, these companies would be very attractive. So I was surprised by this. I did not expect that, but this is something to keep in mind if we're gonna screen further companies in this sector. The other one that's pretty good as well is International Consolidated Airlines Group, also pretty fairly valued, or a bit undervalued, I'd say. And the one you really want to avoid is Norwegian Air Shuttle. Why? Well, look at their acquirers multiple. It's insanely high. It stands out compared to all the others. And why is that? They had a very low EBITDA and they have a very high debt. So this is a riskier investment. So to sum things up, I have added all the numbers, all the ratings that we've given them, added them together, and I made a top 10 list, and I'm going to show you that now. So here you see the recap, the summary of the sector analysis. The top one, Wizz Air, of 49 points. Keep in mind that the maximum points that they could receive was 55 points. So Wizz Air basically scores well on all aspects except for insider buying in the past 3 months. We haven't seen them buying shares. So next up, Aegean Airlines, 44 points, very good. These 2 companies are in market share, they do not really matter. Like if you go back to the first sheet or you just rewind the video, you will notice that they barely have, in comparison, they don't really have many passengers. But the third one, International Consolidated Airlines Group, scores well for the industry that they're in. And keep in mind, these are not your average cheap flights that they offer or something like that. No, these are actually very standoutish names like British Airways, Aer Lingus, Vueling, like so Ireland, Great Britain, Spain, like all the main airlines from those countries, and they have a very good rating right now to be invested in. So that one is one to consider, and you can see that the EasyJet, the Ryanair, the price fighters, those look attractive as well. So take your time in checking all these numbers, and I suggest you take them all into consideration and make a decision that is fit for you. But I hope that you find some use in these numbers. I would like to point out as well, Air France KLM, 12 points, did very terrible. I'm Dutch, it hurts me to see this, but yeah, Air France KLM is not a good company to invest in. It is a great company for the economy of the Netherlands and for France probably as well, but for an investor, no thank you. And to talk about TUI, TUI has several business units, so it is impossible to compare TUI to these airlines. However, I was surprised to how poorly it scored, not just on the rating, but also on their own metrics. In the future, I will be doing more sector analyses, and I will be including TUI in those as well, when relevant. For example, I want to look at the cruise line industry, because those have had a very significant drop as well. So, I hope you enjoyed this video. Feel free to leave any feedback or questions in the comment below. If you have any preferences as to what you would like me to see researching or have a video about, please let me know in the comments as well. For now, I wish you all a great day.